Rock and Stone Miners, I'm your host, Get Good Fox, and I'm here to help you get good at deep dives and elite deep dives for this week, which is February 2nd, 2023. Remember, the deep dives and the elite deep dives, they change each week on Thursday, and during that week, the experience is basically the same for everyone with subtle variation within them. For example, if you play with a full squad of 4, there will probably be more enemies, but it will still be a very similar experience. So I'm going to go in there, I'm going to show you all the objectives for both deep dives and elite deep dives, what I did to overcome them. I'll make note of any interesting threats that I found along the way, then I'll wrap it up with class recommendations and specific things you can do to overcome this week's deep dives and elite deep dive. Remember to use the video progress bar down below to skip to whatever section you want to see or re-watch. And remember, if you want to see this content live, you can catch me at Get Good Fox on Twitch. And if you missed it, you can watch it after the fact at YouTube at Get Good Fox, where I upload all of my stream VODs. Anyways, let's get started with the deep dive. So mission number 1, you're going to have to salvage 2 mules, and yes, you will have to go through the complete process of repairing the mules, sending them to the abandoned drop pod, and getting the drop pod back online. You'll also have to kill 1 dreadnought, and that dreadnought is going to be a hive guard. There's also a warning for an exploder infestation, which means that you will be regularly attacked by little squads of exploder glyphids, so make sure you are checking your surroundings. Every 20 seconds, I'd recommend just, look around to see if you're about to get blown up by something. Overall, this mission is pretty straightforward. All of the objectives are going to be in one large chamber, and the only things that I found especially interesting was near the abandoned drop pod, I found 2 spitball infectors. They do a lot of damage, but they're pretty fragile, so plug a few rounds into them and they are going to go down. Otherwise, the mission was pretty uneventful with the exception of the exploders, but like I said, just every 20 seconds or so, look around and you'll probably find them on the ceiling or sneaking up right behind you. As far as the boss went, the Dreadnought Hive Guard, the best way to deal with it is going to be to have someone play as a driller and bring the sludge pump and the wave cooker, specifically with the level 5 upgrade on the wave cooker known as the Contagion Transmitter. Hit them with the sludge, then cook them for a little bit with the wave cooker, and you'll be able to apply 2 slow down effects on them. The sludge itself and the neurotoxin, which is generated when the wave cooker hits a target that is currently sludged. That will make the Hive Guard crawl. It'll be super, super slow, and you'll be able to easily cut it apart because it will no longer be able to aggressively charge. Its attacks become very predictable, and it's also very slow, so you'll be able to do a ton of damage. In addition to that, I didn't find anything remarkable about the pod defense, aside from, yes, you'll be periodically attacked by exploders. So let's move on to Mission 2, which you will have to protect the drill dozer. So yeah, you'll be going through the whole Amaran Heartstone drilling process. You'll also need to collect 150 Morkite along the way, and there is a warning for an elite threat. In my experience, the elite enemies primarily consisted of Macteras, Praetorians, and Glyphid menaces, with an emphasis on it being primarily Praetorians and Glyphid menaces. The only one that I think is a real threat here are the menaces, because they do a lot of damage. However, as long as you continuously move, even strafe, the Glyphid menace won't be able to really nail you down, so just keep moving, return fire, and you'll take them out. As far as interesting events went within the mission, I found a brood nexus at the refueling point. There was only 1 refueling point, so it's not a super long mission. If you're looking for where the Morkite is, I found quite a bit of it actually inside of the heart room itself. And as far as the drilling sequence goes on the Amaran Heartstone, it was a pretty ordinary defense. There were some elite enemies. I didn't find them to be anything that was going to slow me down. Remember that if you bring a driller from the previous mission, that means you're going to be able to drill down those beamers pretty easily, and if you got somebody like a gunner or an engineer, they're going to be able to shoot down all of the incoming rocks pretty easily. Well, let's go ahead and move on into Mission 3. You're going to have to refine some liquid morkite, and you're going to have to kill another dreadnought. It will also be a dreadnought hive guard. There is an anomaly effect going on, which is volatile guts, which cause enemies to explode on death, which will help you quite a bit, because when they explode, they will take out quite a few other enemies around them. So this mission felt pretty routine. There weren't any real surprises to speak of. You're going to pump the morkite. All of the pump jacks were easy to access, and yeah, you'll have to take out the hive guard, but once again, if you brought that sludge pumping driller with you with the cullet wave cooker, you're going to take it out pretty easy. In the event that you didn't, the best thing to do is weaken the hive guard until it's about to be vulnerable. So knock down 2 of the 3 organs you have to hit. Once it is ready to become vulnerable, don't knock down the 3rd organ until you're in position to actually do some damage. Once you knock down the 3rd organ, the hive guard will be enraged and it'll roar, and in this time you can do a ton of damage to it. So you don't gotta have yourself a driller, it just makes it a little bit easier. During the pumping sequence, I found that there were only 2 breakdowns, and it was overall really smooth. Now that you've got 3 matrices in the bag, it's time to crank up the heat and go into the Elite Deep Dive. Now, I've got some good news. This week's Elite Deep Dive is not as hard as last week's. In addition to that, I would say the first mission is probably the most difficult, and each one is a little bit easier than the last, but don't let your guard down. It's still an Elite Deep Dive. Anyways, mission 1 is to collect 7 quarks. That means you will be doing a point extraction, which is probably why it's the hardest. You'll also have to collect 2 alien eggs before management will let you descend to the next phase. So the first thing you need to know, and this is before you even launch the mission, this is hazard 4.5 point extraction. Remember, the longer you are in a point extraction, the worse it gets. The enemy attacks become increasingly fast until you get to the point that there's nothing but bugs everywhere. In addition to that, there's not a lot more than 7 quarks. I think there's probably like 9 of them, so you're gonna have to get every single one that you find, and some of them can be in inconvenient locations like on the roof. Anyways, as far as the walkthrough goes, as soon as I got out of the drop pod, I was immediately attacked by a spitball infector right outside of the landing zone. And then on top of that, a full-sized attack wave erupted out of the ground before the minehead even came down into its deployment zone. And yep, big old battle right off the bat. Wardens, Trijaws, Slashers, Praetorians, they want to shut you out of this mission as soon as it gets started. The way you can deal with this is by using either lure grenades or pheromone grenades, because you can turn the enemies against themselves with pheromones and cluster them together with a lure, and then your area of effect character, like maybe you've got a gunner with an autocannon, can just brutalize them because they're so packed together. The only other thing of note I found was that there was a cave leech near one of the quarks, specifically an quark that is embedded on the ground floor. I actually walked under it a few times because I was zipping around too fast. In addition to that, there was the quark on the ceiling. The way we got it was with a zip line, and like I said, there's not a lot of quarks in this level, so you're probably going to want to grab every single one that you find, so plan ahead and bring someone who is going to be capable of getting items on the roof. As far as the eggs go, one of them triggered a full-size swarm, the other triggered a normal attack wave. Just keep in mind that a normal attack wave on hazard 4.5 is still a decent number of enemies. But that's all for mission 1. Let's go ahead and move into mission 2, where you're going to need to collect 225 morkite and another 2 alien eggs. However, there's modifiers. First, a warning. Shield disruption. That means you will have no shielding the entire mission. And there's an anomaly, low gravity, which means you can jump higher, you float in the air longer, and you can fall farther without taking falling damage, but you could still take falling damage if you fall far enough. Now, a forewarning. Elite Deep Dive Mission 2 features the longest and most complex cave system of the 3 missions, so it's going to test your endurance and your teamwork because of the shield disruption. The enemy attacks are not unbearable, but if you do not constantly have in the back of your head as you are traveling through the cave, this is the ideal place to fight off a swarm. if a swarm happens right now, you're going to be caught with your pants down. That is what's going to get you owned in this mission. Stay together, think about where you're going to hold off the swarms. When the swarms hit, cover each other's angles, cover each other's backs, and you'll find that it's really not that bad. Use the low gravity to platform around to escape enemies more effectively, and remember that ammo pods give you healing and health both. Now, because this cave is fairly lengthy, I'm going to describe what I encountered room by room. So in room 1, which is the first room after your drop location, I found both a netocite breeder and a spitball infector. Remember, there could be even more if you're playing with a full squad. They were both at the entrance. In addition to that, I encountered a bulk detonator here during a swarm, and it is possible that the bulk detonator may appear at a different location, but what I would plan for is that you're probably going to fight at least one bulk detonator somewhere in Elite Deep Dive Mission 2. If you do encounter it, and when you encounter it, I should say, this is where the pheromone grenade becomes really nice. You can throw it on the detonator, the other glyphids will swarm around it, do damage, help you kill it, and if you take down that bulk detonator during the effect, it's going to go critical and take all of those glyphids with it. Remember, you can use the low gravity to take farther falls than normal and jump higher to help you escape the detonator. You'll also find an egg in this room, and when I pulled the egg, I got a normal attack, but not a swarm. The second room was smaller, and it contained a brood nexus and a huli hoarder, but otherwise was fairly unremarkable. The third room is a fairly complicated room with multiple floors. There's a lot of minerals here, and there's a lot of hazardous fire vents erupting from the ground. That said, there were no unique enemies. However, because you're probably going to spend some time here, and there is an egg that does trigger a swarm, you will probably also get maybe 1 or 2 organically spawning swarms, because you're probably going to spend a lot of time in room number 3. So when you get there, think about where you're going to fall back to defend against the incoming swarms. Don't get caught with your pants down. The last room we went to was the fourth room. It was unremarkable. We just went right in, grabbed the last bit of morkite that we needed, and then we left. But that's going to take us into Mission 3, which at this point, my friend who was with me had to go to a meeting, so I was on my own to collect 4 alien eggs and also kill 1 dreadnought. The dreadnought in question will be a standard glyphid dreadnought. However, there's also a warning for this level, which is low oxygen. What that means is, before you run out of oxygen, you're going to have to retreat to an oxygen-producing source. In this mission, that's going to be Molly the Mule and any ammo pods that you create. So having extra nitra is going to be very important because, well, you're going to have to fight a boss and you're going to have to get oxygen during the boss. Now, there's good news and bad news about this mission. The good news is that it's really short. There's really basically this one major cave, and all the objectives are there. The bad news is that you are going to be attacked very, very frequently with very little time in between each attack wave, and the attack waves regularly included Macteras, including Mactera Trijaw squadrons. These can absolutely ruin your day and jeopardize your run. I also was attacked by a bulk detonator. The attacks were so intense that I was actually trapped inside the starting room for 4 attacks in a row where the detonator eventually made its appearance. However, the starting room wasn't a bad place to run away from it. I used pheromones on it because I was playing as scout and eventually shot it apart. Inside the primary chamber, I'm just going to call it the egg chamber, however, I did find some pre-spawned enemies, which you are going to want to clear out. Of note, there is a spitball infector, a brood nexus, and a cave leech, all relatively close to one another. Make sure you just completely eradicate everything that is a pre-spawned enemy, suppress all of the threats before you begin preparing to fight the boss, which I do recommend you fight first. So before you fight this boss, there's probably two things you should do. One, you could consider pulling the boss back to the starting room, or you could fight it inside of the egg chamber. If you want to fight it in the egg chamber, make sure that the land you can actually move around. You're not going to get trapped on things. So if you're an engineer, put some platforms down. Think about some zip lines. If you're a driller, drill some pathways around so that you can run away from the boss. You do not want to get trapped. Also, think about where you're going to put the ammo, because you're going to need oxygen and ammo both. Try to put it somewhere that is fairly accessible, relatively safe, so that you don't get owned trying to get your supplies. Also, make sure you maintain your oxygen. Don't wait until the last minute, because you don't want something to happen like you're going to get oxygen because you're about to die, and then Macteras show up and they're like, oh, do you have to stay put in one spot? Isn't that unfortunate for you? So try to maintain your oxygen. As far as fighting the Dreadnought goes, if you brought a driller with the sludge combo, this is not going to be too hard. If you didn't, like me, you're going to have to fight it the old-fashioned way. The way you kill a Glyphid Dreadnought pretty efficiently without a slowdown combo to snare it and just shoot it apart is to whittle its armor down until it's about to break, but don't break it. Once the armor is low, bait the Dreadnought into coming into melee with you so it will do its massive slam attack. Although a very dangerous attack, once the Glyphid slams, it stays still for a very long time, and you can do a ton of damage to it there. Since I'm playing as a scout, I just wait for it to kind of roar and rear up, then I use my grappling hook to get behind it, safely away outside of the massive range of the slam attack, and then I just pump everything I've got into it. You'll do so much damage. You'll feel so good about it. If you're not a scout, then consider having the dash active skill. The dash active skill is on a 25-second cooldown. It makes you go pretty fast, too, so you can use it in a similar manner, and since it's on a short cooldown, you can use it pretty regularly. Once the Dreadnought is dead, you are nearly done, but do not let your guard down. Like I said, I experienced a large number of Mactera attacks. Not necessarily Mactera swarms, just lots of Macteras in a mixed attack, including many Trijaws. They are very, very dangerous. They do a ton of damage. Please, be careful this close to the end. As far as the eggs go, one of the eggs triggered a siege, and the others triggered regular everyday attacks, but it's hazard 5 in attack, so a regular everyday attack could still be extremely dangerous. Once again, beware of the Trijaws, maintain your oxygen, don't get pinned down to an oxygen generator when there is a Trijaw attack. Anyways, let's wrap up with my final recommendations for this week's Deep Dive and Elite Deep Dive. So for the Deep Dive, I think it is fairly easy, especially if you can defeat Hazard 3. The warnings weren't really that big of a deal, and the characters I'd recommend bringing would be a Driller. Driller's going to make the boss fights just so much easier, and he's going to be able to drill down the beamers during the final phase of the Amaran Heartstone escort mission. The Engineer is also going to be really good. There are some defensive scenes. You got to defend the drop pod as it is being repaired on the Salvage the Mules mission, and you got an escort mission, so you're going to have to defend Doretta. The machine gun turrets that it has are pretty good at that. You also get lure grenades when you're an engineer. Lures are so good at containing the enemy, getting them off of you, and the shard diffractor is great for killing enemy bosses, and it's pretty good at shooting down the Amaran rocks. As far as the Elite Deep Dive goes, it is easier than last week's, but it's still an Elite Deep Dive. It's still going to test you, and like I said, each mission I think is a little bit easier than the last one, so if you can beat the first one, you've got a solid chance of beating the last ones, and the fact that you can carry your Nitra over is going to make a big deal, because you'll be able to heal better in the second mission where you have the shield disruption, and you're going to need those ammo pods to give you oxygen in the third mission. As far as my class recommendations go, I think the Gunner plays a pretty good role here because he's got the zip lines. The zip lines are going to make transporting the Aquarks and getting that sealing Aquark a lot easier. And in the second mission, the terrain is really complex. There's like a lot of like just fractal, just kind of like earthquaked terrain everywhere, and the zip lines are going to make it a lot easier. You also have the devastating autocannon that is going to shred down the enemies, especially if you got someone with lure grenades or pheromones to cluster the enemies up. Also, you get the shield. The shield is such a game changer. With the shield, you can revive any of your allies that get downed. You can get ammo in peace. You can get oxygen in peace. The shields are going to be a pretty big deal. The other character that I think is going to have a really big advantage here is the Scout. The Scout's going to let you find the resources very quickly because he's fast and he can light up the room. He's going to get the Quarks quickly. He's going to get a lot of Nitra. Remember, you need Nitra for more healing in Mission 2, and you're going to need more oxygen in Mission 3. He's also going to be able to locate those unique threats more easily. I'm talking about like cave leeches, brood nexus, spitball infectors, and then he brings the devastating pheromone grenades, turn the enemy's numbers against one another, cluster them up, and then the gunner is just going to shred them with that devastating AoE attack from the autocannon. Anyways, there you have it. I hope you get all 6 Matrix cores from this week's Deep Dive and Elite Deep Dive. And I also hope this guide comes in handy for you, showing you what you can expect as you descend into the depths of Hoxie's. Remember, if you want to see me play live, you can see me especially on Thursday, where I'm going to do the Deep Dive and the Elite Deep Dive on Twitch at Get Good Fox. And if you missed any of the episodes, check out my other YouTube channel, Get Good Fox VODs, where all of the streams get uploaded. But until next time, let me know what you think down in the comments section. Share any wisdom you have. You might help other miners with each nugget, every kernel of wisdom there. Could be a tip that helps somebody get one more Matrix core. If you want to help out the Fox Republic, just give the video a like, subscribe. But at the end of the day, of course, remember that you don't have to be good to get good.